All right, so now we will continue on and we will start with our first session with Dr. Livingston. You have the ability to share.
Okay, so I want to talk about what's a very interesting possibility for folks in rural areas in Tennessee, and that's this Community Facilities Direct Loans and Grants program. So I'm going to give you an overview of the program and then talk about what the program calls the pre-application process, but what a lot of people might call the application process. Okay, so this program provides funding to develop essential community facilities in rural areas. And I have below on this slide a more expanded definition of that. But really, it's almost easier to talk about what you can't do with the funds in this program. And really, the only three categories that you could sort of count on not working for you would be a private a function or a private activity or a commercial activity. That's probably not going to work either. And then a recreational facility is not allowed in the program. Now, you can have a facility that has some recreational aspects to it, but it just can't primarily be for recreational purposes. But just about anything else falls under the rubric. It's something that you might be able to finance with this program. I just trolled the recent Tennessee recipients to show you a couple of examples of communities in Tennessee that did get financing from this program. It's a little bit at random, okay? But the city of Athens got a loan of $5 million for an elementary school. Sequatchie County got a combination loan and grant to buy some fire protection equipment. The city of Covington got a loan and a grant to repave and mill some of its city streets. So that's just three examples of all kinds of different things that you can finance with this program. The program is intended for rural areas. Now that's defined as an area of less than 20,000 people. The program does give priority for smaller communities, communities under 5,500 people, and communities whose household income is a little lower than other non-metro areas of the state. So that's who has priority for receiving these loans and grants. Basically, I think as the community becomes smaller and incomes are less, there's a larger grant portion to the program. Okay, so applicants are limited to one of three categories. They are limited to public bodies. That's any kind of a government or a water district or something of this sort. Community-based nonprofits. Community-based means the nonprofit is in the area where they're providing the service. It's not a nonprofit located somewhere else in the US. And then federally recognized tribes. Okay, so how do you apply? Well, the applications are year-round, so there's no fixed deadline. But as you may know, the United States has a fiscal year that runs October 1 to October 1, and your best bet is to get the application in relatively early after that October 1, okay, to optimize the chance that there's still funds available. And if you are thinking about applying, the first and maybe obvious step is to contact the USDA Rural Development Office closest to you to discuss the project with them. And I have here the web address of that office. And then I have a map, and you can see, remember, these things will be posted after the talk is ended. So you can see the closest office to you and the contact person and phone number and so forth. Okay, all of the application materials are online, and you will learn more about the nuts and bolts of accessing those materials and filling them out in our next sessions. So The process of assembling all the documentation that you need to receive one of these loans or grants is called the pre-application process. And it's a little bit confusing, but when you pre-apply and turn all your documents in, you have essentially applied. So it's just sort of the difference between pre-application and pre-application is very little. The main effort is pre-application. The application is simple. You just submit what you have assembled. And pre-application involves a number of steps, which I am going to go through, that tells the government what you're trying to do, what your financial situation is, how you're going to complete this project. There is no set order in which to do that because it's just assembling documents. But the government, the USDA, suggests that you begin by getting your organizational documents and by acquiring a DUNS number and SAM registration. I'm going to speak about those in just a second, what those things are. But it's just because these things involve some bureaucracy, and so they might take somewhat longer than some of the other steps. Okay. Now I'm going to go through all the steps to pre-application. And I just want to say that there are some differences depending upon the size of the financing you're asking for and the nature of the project. So there would be a few additional steps if you have a very large project and if you have a project that involves substantial construction, okay? So USDA has a checklist, and you are looking at the checklist. I am simply going to walk right through it and go through every step and tell you what it is you have to do and how you do it. And so, yes, the first thing are these DUN numbers and the SAM system. Dun & Bradstreet, you may know, is a business information company, and they give every business entity in the U.S. a unique 9-digit number to identify them. And so USDA is asking you to obtain one of those numbers for them to manage the grant or loan. And the same thing works for the Systems Award Management Register System, which is a federal system, which, as the name suggests, manages grants. It's how the software to manage grants. So you need to get into that system. Okay. The Rural Development Office can and will help you to obtain both of those. So at the bottom of the slide there, I simply say, give you the web address again, or refer back to slide 11. And when you speak to the representative of rural development, you can ask them about how to obtain both of those. Okay, so we can consider that step one. Step two, most of these things are pretty straightforward, right? To obtain a grant or a loan, the government would like to know that you can't do better on the commercial market. So it's asking you to show that you can't get credit at more reasonable rates and terms elsewhere. Now, the thing is, it's almost certain that you can't. It's extremely unlikely you can find a commercial lender that can beat the rate and terms of this program. But they are asking you just to give evidence. And the evidence consists of 3 written statements from banks that indicate the rate and terms they would give you if they had reviewed your application and if they had found lending to you to be favorable. You do not have to be reviewed, right? You're simply asking the bank to assume that they had reviewed you and then to say what kind of terms they would give you if they had have done so. And I have an example here of such a letter from a bank. Now this one's a little, this particular letter shows a rejection but you do not have to go that far. You simply have to get rates and terms, and so that the program can see that, yes, they're not as good as ours. The next thing you have to do is give a project narrative. And it's pretty straightforward. Again, you have to indicate what you're doing, what the need for it is, if there are other parties involved, who they are. You have to give a timeline. Now, if it's a purchase of something, obviously there's no timeline. There's just a single point of purchase. But if you are engaged in something that will occur over months or years, you need to give a timeline. You have to give a cost breakdown of the project. And again, if it's a single purchase, that's easy. If there's multiple aspects, then you have to break down the costs. And if it so happens that there is potential human health hazards to your project, you have to make program officials aware of that. So that is the project narrative. Next, you are asked to provide some financial records. The program is only open to entities, nonprofits or public agencies that have had 5 successful years of operation. Okay, so you have to meet that test. And then, presuming you've met that test, you have to provide 5 years of audited financial statements, which ought to be easy for most, right? Most entities would be doing these every year, so it's just a matter of assembling them. Then you have to provide a proposed budget for the current fiscal year, right? The first year that you would be getting the loan or grant. Again, if this is a single purchase, then that's just indicating the purchase price. But if it's multi-year, the project is multi-year, then you want to list expenditure by year and by category. I won't read through all of this, but this is a form that you are asked to fill out. It's called the feasibility report. It's form RD 1942-54, and it pretty much asks you to repeat your narrative, is what it comes down to. You're asked to indicate what you've got currently, what you're proposing to do, the need for what you're proposing to do, who it's for, right? The service area, the cost estimate. If the project will be bringing in income, then how much, where and how that's coming from. If you are seeking other funds, where those funds are, how much they are going to be. And lastly, if you are already operating something like what you wish to build or upgrade, then give the history, the operating history of what is currently in place. Next, and again, maybe obviously, you have to indicate that your project has been approved by your own people. And that means you should provide the meeting minutes that approved the project, or the board resolution, or whatever it was that shows that your organization, in fact, has decided to seek this loan or grant. Then you have to show, I told you there's these 3 categories of people who are eligible. You have to show you're in one of them. So if you're a nonprofit, you need to show the articles of incorporation that you are, in fact, a nonprofit. And if you are a public body, you need to show a copy of your charter. And the charter should show that it was recorded in the state's Secretary of State office in Tennessee, as well as your local county registrar's office. Okay, now, if your project involves building something, involves construction, there are some differences than if you're just purchasing something. And you need an architectural report if you are doing construction. The Rural Development Office has names of firms that have done reports for other applicants. And it can give you those names. It can't recommend one firm over another, but it can give you some people that you can request this report from. All projects need an environmental assessment. Again, the Rural Development Office can provide assistance in doing that, and it can give you a timeline as to how long it will take. Once again, we have the same issue. If you're just purchasing something, this is trivial, and it will just take a few days. But if you're engaging in a larger project that involves construction or building a new road or something, that will take a little longer. And again, the Rural Development Office can tell you how much longer that will take. Then we're nearing the end here. There's a few certifications that you have to attest to. And most of them are just to deal with federal requirements about obtaining monies. You have to attest that you are not going to use the money to pay lobbyists or buy influence. You're going to have to attest that you don't already have the money that you need to finance this project. You're going to have to attest that there are no outstanding federal judgments against you. And then if you are a nonprofit, you need to get a certificate of support from a local government that they like the idea, right? That they think what you're doing is something that the community wants. And then last, and maybe least, at least in terms of effort, you have to complete a one-page survey about your organization. And this is, again, just to meet federal laws. It is a survey on ensuring equal opportunity for applicants. And it's just a few brief questions about your size and so forth, things like that. Okay, when you have assembled all those things, you are done with your pre-application. And it's just a matter of handing it over to the Rural Development Office. And then you're good to go. Okay, so if you are looking for further information, obviously you can refer back to this set of slides, which we will have posted, and we will have it posted there on the MTSU Business and Economic Research Center page. And I have the URL below there. You can also go to the Rural Development website, and you can see this booklet, Community Facilities Direct Loan Program Guidance Book, which takes you a step by step through, again, how to apply for this grant. Okay, and I'll remind you again that the single best source for information is your local Rural Development Office team. And I believe that completes my talk for today. If you have any questions, I'll be here at the end and be very happy to take them. Okay.
All righty. Thank you, Dr. Livingston. So now we're going to take about a 10-minute break. I'll go ahead and make it a little longer than 10. We'll come back at 12:40 with Keith Gamble in the second session.